Hi, good morning. I'm Annika. Good to see you.
Hello, Annika.
Okay.
How's the weather in Stockholm?
Always sunny, a bit cold, chilly, sunny. That's the way we have it here. And what
Excellent.
about Paris?
It's sunny today.
Hmm, a
Yeah,
bit warmer
so
than here, I guess.
it is not warm.
Okay. It's not below zero. We had the first night of below zero yesterday, so we were, having ice on the car, and so on.
All right. So yeah, I mean, maybe you have different definitions of warm.
But that's another topic, isn't it?
It is. So let's get started with the actual topic. So so this is the second webinar in our series on enterprise design about the Milky Way enterprise map with Annika invented a few, maybe even like 10 years ago, something like that.
2013, so it's eight then.
Excellent. Yeah. So, just to give you a little background, so does it work? So we are the Intersection Group. We are a not-for-profit association, and our mission is to help people create better enterprises. And by better, we mean enterprises that are actually useful, that pursue a clear purpose, and that perform well, and that deliver on whatever they promise with their brand. And the tool that we are going to talk about today is a way to make that happen. So maybe you have been in this kind of situation.
Yeah.
Annika, do you want to tell us about this situation? I think that you have found yourself in a few times.
Definitely. I find myself in several meetings like this where you sit around the table, somebody tells you a great story about something, and everybody looks a bit puzzled. And after the person finishes, we have this in our head. Some people can maybe come from the process dimension, and that person is looking at whatever was presented and saying, well, nice idea, but it does not fit at all with our processes. Another one might be a bit more in the strategic areas and looking at, given the strategies we have, why are we going in this direction that this in the presentation? A third one might be the person from the, I don't know if you can call it portfolio PMO, but anyone who is in charge or have an overview of the change funnel, and quietly might think, nice idea, there is a slot in 2023 in December. There is no capacity to do anything like this. And the fourth one might have some ideas or some thoughts about the organizational structure. And all these views can be valid. But the problem is that around that table, we do not have the vocabulary and the shared common ground to be able to meet and on a shared map, if you like, to discuss these things and maybe reprioritize or find new ways of doing it. So we start a conversation where we just are, missing each other, and it might not end in a frustration, but at least there is a lot of energy that goes into trying to figure out what are the other people talking about and why, how can we find a way forward. But let's assume that the next topic of this meeting is a new colleague presenting himself like, I'm coming from Fiumicino near Rome in Italy. Let's see what we have in our heads then. We have maps and we have different zoom in levels of the same map or the same concept of our geography. So somebody that is not that into the geography of Europe hopefully knows that Italy is in Europe. So you have sort of the European map. If you know Europe, you probably know where Italy lies, but there might be a dissonance about where Rome actually is in Italy. And if you know Rome, then maybe you know the surroundings. And there might be somebody that has already been there and been walking the canals and seeing the harbor there. And the idea with this is we have the same references. We have agreed upon a geography. We have agreed on a way of describing our environment, the Earth, the geographical maps. And that helps us so much. And we're kind of primed into thinking in two-dimensional ways. And the challenging thing is here, is there any way that we could help by thinking in geographies and creating maps so that we could have better meetings than the one that I described in the beginning? And that is partly that is the main idea with this Milky Way map. Can we find a geography that makes sense in the business world? And of course, we're not looking at the office back in up in north of Sweden in Kiruna, or the office in south of Sweden in Ystad. That's not of our interest. It's not the geographical thing that we want to translate into a company. It's more of, can we find the dimensions that would help us to navigate through our, let's say, enterprise system, if you like, or network of capabilities that every enterprise is built upon. And the answer is, after some thinking, yes, there is actually something that we can hold on to within an enterprise that can help us create this geography, and that is the overall value flow. I mean, some of you might be familiar with the old Porter's value, what was it?
Value chain, I think.
Value chain, exactly. Sorry, I just totally. And that is kind of where some inspiration from this came. He's very limited into not so much about product development and so on, but it's more of supply in, produce, and then you ship. It's not so much customer involvement and stuff, but hey, that was many years ago. But the same idea is that, can we find something that we do over and over again, and that will be something that we all within an enterprise can refer to. And in this little simple example, I've done a circle sort of representing the value flow, and then you can flip the icons, saying that what we do first, we have an idea of a new product or service, and then in this case, we produce it in, I don't know, factories or something. Then we meet customers and make contracts, or we sell. And the next step is we deliver it to customers. The next one is we, in some shape or form, need to get some payments, and we probably have some suppliers that we should pay to. And then in the end, we want to make sure that, okay, how did this turn out? Did we make any money? Did the customers like what we did? Are we having the impact on the society or on the environment that we want to have? Those are types of questions that you can ask in that part of the circle. And even though if we were to make a way more detailed map with all the systems and all the capabilities, people, and so on, we would still refer to the same geography, instead of doing like you would do if you had to have a process map with one geography, and an information model or data model with one geography, and maybe an application landscape with a third geography. Here we try to stick to the same geography, no matter how much we're zoomed in or zoomed out. Remember the map that I showed you with the guy from Rome? So now we have a little task for you guys. Take a piece of paper and a pen and see if you can just draw your enterprise value flow really fast. It does not need to be pretty. These pictures are not pretty. They're just pictures. And then they do the trick. And then you send it to napkin@intersection.group. I think you can put that mail address in the chat, maybe, Milan, so that we don't need to keep. If it takes you more than, I don't know, 10 more seconds, that we're going to stay on this this slide, just to see if you can sort of get a hang of it. And usually, I'd say that pictures are easier than if you start to write words. And we can maybe say that you can mail it and without name. You will not out the name, right? Would you really just post the different drawings?
Well, yeah, probably we will get your name because you're emailing it, but the name of your enterprise you can keep secret.
Exactly. So share and try.
And we will look at that later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's a way. You get till the kind of the end of the presentation. So I would say like half an hour, maybe.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing, is like, how can we navigate an enterprise? The other thing is, what is there to look at when we look at an enterprise? And you might be familiar with Simon Sinek's book and a golden circle that says you should start with why. Why are you doing what you are doing? And then define kind of what it is that you are doing for whom, and only then look into the how you go about it and how you actually do it. So I took a napkin the other day and tried to illustrate how we combine those two ideas on one napkin in a Milky Way map. So basically you start from why in the middle, like why do we do what we are doing? And then you can go into the what at the very edge of the napkin, say, how do we appear in our customers' lives, right? And you could draw their journey, how they find your enterprise, interact with you, and leave again, hopefully come back. And then you can look into the how are we helping them to do that? And this corresponds to a model that we made with the intersection group, which is, I would say, the successor and the next version. If you know my book Intersection, that's kind of the successor of the model presented in there, which is a model about, if we look at enterprises, what is it that we are actually looking at, and what perspectives can help us make sense of what we are seeing. And so you might be familiar with some of these perspectives, like the architecture. So how does everything work together? How are we capable of achieving what we can achieve? The identity is who we are, what do we want to do in the world, what matters to us, what's important. And we have the experience, which is how do we appear in people's lives, in our customers' lives, but maybe also in our employees or investors' lives. And if we combine these, we get to a kind of map topology where we can say, okay, the experience at the outside is what we do for people. The identity in the middle is why we do what we do. And the how is the architecture that bridges those two, like what do we need to put in place in order to do so. And then we also have the intersections between those different facets, which is how do we translate who we are and what we want to do in the world into an architecture, being capable of achieving something where we need to make an organization. We need to work together as a team in implementing these capabilities and pursuing these purposes. This identity then will translate into a brand that will be perceived by people that experience interacting with us. And we are not only appearing in these experiences with our brand, but also with our products and services, which is what we are making and offering. And so if we look at that model more detailed, we get to the model of elements that we are using when looking at enterprises, which is what outcomes do they pursue, what activities are they doing, what's going on, and what are the things that need to be put in place. And we will today not go into details of this model because that would be too much time, and also it overlaps with a webinar that we will have later, which is called EDGI, because this is a language that we are working on called the Enterprise Design Graphical Morphology. So morphing different configurations of enterprise to make sense of it, with definitions for each of these and relations between them and so on. But today we want to just look at mapping some of this stuff with a shared geography and enable conversations between people that care about different sets of these elements and how they interrelate.
And also a small sort of reference, this is also where we see how we merge the original thoughts around the Milky Way with the geography and all those things. But there was almost only the blue stuff on my original maps. So this collaboration with enterprise design and you guys, Milan, has really sort of enriched this way of working with the map and making it way more human, sort of being able to carry a lot more conversations around important topics and sense making a lot of these things. So it's really an interesting mix, I think.
Yeah. So if you look at, I agree. If you look at the base map topology or geography that we are working with is basically we have the value flow in the middle, which is simplified here to make, market, deliver, and learn. As we said before, it's better to find your own, like one that makes sense for your enterprise or the part of the enterprise that you're looking at. And then we look into why, the identity, how, the architecture, and what we are doing for customers or other actors. And we also look at the boundaries between these. So what organization do you put in place to enable your people pursue your goals and translate that into an architecture? What kind of products do you make available to those audiences that you address in the red? And then how are you being perceived overall as a brand? And if we add the elements to that, we get to something like this. So in the inner ring, we look at the purpose and the story behind the enterprise. Then we look at the capabilities and the processes that are going on in order to pursue those goals and serve people's tasks, which is what they want to do with your help as an enterprise, also known, for example, as jobs to be done or customer needs, and the journeys that they are going through. And in between, we look at, okay, how do we design this into an organizational structure, who does what, into product offerings and into brands and something that makes sense for people interacting with us. So second question for you, what kind of maps are you making? Because we will show you a map today, and I know this is probably not the first map you are making if you are in this webinar. So please just go to the URL that I'm now writing also in the chat, which is i-g.at/vote. You can also scan the QR code. And of all those maps that we asked you to select from there, which is the one you're making them and using the most frequently? And I need to switch to this one. And there we go. So far, capability maps win, shortly followed by process maps. Oh!
I see. By application of architecture, that's important too. But we can join them, can't we?
Yes.
Oh, there's a Milky Way.
Yes, there's a Milky Way. There's an org chart. There's the business model canvas. I see we might have some designers in the room making service blueprints and customer journeys or personas. Someone is making a Wortley map.
That's interesting. That's something we need to bring on too.
Yeah. So the thing about all these models is that they are, of course, very different and they serve different purposes. But in a way, they are competing for one question, which is, what is the best way to visualize what's going on in an enterprise? What we need to look at when sitting in the room and plotting together what the future might look like, what needs to be done, which is in the end the ultimate, quite simple question that these maps also try to answer, right? So how do we make money in the future? What applications do we need to replace so that it continues working? What kind of capabilities or processes do we need to put in place? How do we appear in our customers' lives? How do we organize ourselves? How do we make sense of, I would say in the Wortley map, basically the ongoing commoditization of everything we're offering and everything we're using? How do we bridge our delivery and our customer side in a service blueprint and so on? So thank you for the snapshot. Going back.
Yeah.
And so we will start showing you some examples of maps using a railway company. That railway company that we are mapping does not actually exist. It's a generic example that we are using. It's called Intersection Railways. But in order to make it more realistic, we pulled examples of actual models that you might find in Google image search or on some companies' websites. And try to connect those different perspectives on that enterprise, that fictional enterprise in a Milky Way. So this is a Shinkansen train in Tokyo. So this is the JR East railway company in Japan. And so if you remember now the enterprise on a napkin, we start with why. So we try to find for this company any kind of expression, any kind of model, why they exist, what they pursue. Actually, we are going to Japan because this is one of the best examples I found, right? So they work on things like, who are they working for? Domestic and overseas customers, employees and their families, people in communities, which is a quite wide spectrum of people to address. What are they doing for them? They work on trust and affluence as values. They look at people's daily lives and at safety as the most important value internally. And then you have here some more concrete goals: making cities more comfortable, making regional areas affluent, developing business of Japan for the world, getting even more concrete, making a shared infrastructure, establishing business models for overseas businesses, being creative. And so what we can find in there is elements that we can include in our map purpose statements, right? So bring people together, seamless mobility, provide data-driven services. So look at the data we are collecting and use that for product and service design, building a shared infrastructure, and ultimately be very safe. And you can go on and find more. We'll look into that later. But the very simple mapping that we made is, okay, we need to build the shared infrastructure, and then we go into that loop. We try to bring people together with our products. We try to market products and services that fulfill this promise of seamless mobility. When we deliver those services, we strive for comfort and convenience and ultimate safety levels. And then we learn from everything that happened, looking at our data analytics, and try to provide data-driven new services in the next loop. Identity mapped. Let's look at the experience dimension. This is an example. When you just Google experience map, you will find this. This is also for I think it's for Rail Europe. I'm not actually sure if that company exists or if it's a federation of railway companies, but it's like the example you find for a customer journey map, because it's made by Adaptive Path, like the pioneers of the whole field. And you see there, the customers go through stages when they want to travel using railway: research and planning, shopping, booking, traveling, post-travel. And in there, they go through these journeys. You have loops between different touch points, different channels. Some are more linear, some are more circular, some are more, squiggly. And then they think something, they feel something, and we find opportunities for our business in there to act on that. We can map that, right? So we have actually a lot of overlap with goals that we find in the identity. We might add some from the customer perspective, like supports personal travel plans. We look at the journey steps on top, and we look at tasks that people need to fulfill within this journey, like consider where to go, talk to friends, make common plans, research hotels, look at times, pay for a ticket, troubleshoot if it doesn't work, get the tickets, get to the station, get on the train. And on the bottom, we can look at how do we want to appear in this journey, and how do we address these tasks with products, like offerings of destinations, go to Prague next week, support services, planning tools, ticketing offerings, so different kinds of tickets, for example. Maybe there's a Explore Europe on one weekend for the Japanese customers. So we can map that, right? So we can put those tasks following the journey on our map and say, okay, this is how the customer interacts with us. They consider destinations, they talk to some people, plan a trip. Then there's the transactional side. They buy a ticket, but then in the end, they still have to, again, coordinate with their friends, get to the station together, get on the train. And if something went wrong, we might oftentimes journey maps are golden paths, right? So if something goes wrong? Maybe the train was late. So then they claim a refund. So here we have the journey mapped. Finally, if we want to look at architecture, how do we map that? This is a picture from a UK railway industry site for engineers. And this is a picture that shows the future of the railway industry, you could say, how the railway service is going to be delivered. And there you have things like, well, we have intelligent trains, but we also have more space. We have R&D, personalized customer experience, efficient access, plant maintenance using satellite support, and so on, connectivity between different services and different kinds of products or infrastructures. So in there, we can find capabilities that we need to map, like energy management, operating the train, designing the products, managing the customer relationship, analytics, innovation, operating the station, scheduling the trains. Sometimes if you look, if you ask customers or if you ask your clients, in our case, for more detailed or for operational models, you might get something like this, like a process model for handling claims, which is useful for looking into the details, but we are not there yet. So what we are looking for rather is really a collection of all the capabilities that we need to consider in order to make this bridge between the why and the what. So how do we do this? And so here we have the capabilities mapped again to the value flow, and how we bridge, for example, bringing people together by having a catalog of products like destinations, for example, that then serves the task of our customer, which is considering destinations to go. So we can, using this shared dimension of time, explore the context of the capabilities. What does this do for customer or other external actors? What kind of goals and purposes does this pursue? And from there, I can show you a sketch of the geography of the Milky Way, which we will see in some examples right now. So because we have the value flow usually says, we start making something, we're offering it, we market it, and then we deliver it, and then we learn from that. From that, you have certain dimensions that you can deduce. And it's important to notice that the map Annika developed is coming from the flow, not from these dimensions, but you will find that in the corners of the map, you always have the same things, which is in the bottom, you have basically, we pause between those cycles and we think and reflect. What's our strategy? Who should we hire? What do we do to our IT in the next 5 years and stuff like that? Well, on the very top, you have, okay, we're delivering now, we are running it, we are doing something. And this is also where we meet the customers. So the customers, usually you find them at the top of the map, buying something and using something. On the left side of the map, you usually find, what do we make? What do we need to source in order to make that happen? While on the right side of the map, you have, okay, how do we deliver and how do we learn from what happened once we do? And then, of course, you have those layers of why, how, and what, which corresponds to the facets of experience, architecture, and identity, which also corresponds to how close is what we map to us as an enterprise at the heart of this, which is the identity, and who we are serving distant in the ecosystem. And yeah, this is how we then map the elements also onto the map, right? So you find the same elements, purpose statements, capabilities, tasks, and so on the map. You also find people on the map. When we zoom out, right? So we have the enterprise level in the middle. If we zoom out and we want to look at the ecosystem, we have to acknowledge that we are actually not alone. We depend on many other actors. So we can actually use the same geography and look at, okay, who appears on this flow, right? So when we are strategic thinking and learning, on the inside, we have the executives or the founders or the managers preparing basically the flow. We have then back office staff like product managers, product owners starting making what we offer, maybe together with partners. Then we need to get in touch with customers, which initially are prospects. We also have to pull in our suppliers. So there's mostly front office staff interacting with them. Then we have operational staff delivering to actual customers. Maybe we have even consideration like Japan Railway starts for the overall humanity. We also need money from investors for the next loop. We need to engage with regulators. So that's on the ecosystem level. But we can also zoom into any of these facets and say, okay, if we now look at the architecture in detail, is there an intervention that we can do in this intervention space at the bottom that will help us be more future ready or more resilient? So there we might look into just the blue, like the process design, the operating model, the capabilities. So we might actually map capabilities that might look like this, like a hierarchical map of cohesive capabilities that we can then inform by a future scenario that we mapped on the Milky Way and make sure that those two models are in sync. Here's an example of a Milky Way that is a bit more, I would say, looking into this delivery side. Annika, do you wanna take this one?
I can do that, because here we have added some things. We have added the white little boxes, and those represents applications. So if you remember the type of models that you were using, you had processes, capabilities, and application models were something that you in the query said that you were using. And here we are actually combining these three. I mean, the process is part of the value flow, so we know where we are. And now something happened. What are you?
Oh, sorry.
And then we added the applications as small boxes, and also we started to map how the capabilities are interacting with each other. And that is an interesting thing. Depending on who you are, you probably say, oh, that's the integration. Ah, that's the whatever. Or if you are more of a technical person, you might think of technical integrations and APIs and all those things. And if you are more from the process side, you might say, okay, here I see who is interested in the result that we have produced in my process, and who's taking the next step with this result, and maybe treating that as a trigger. So these arrows can actually mean all these things. And if you think of it, most likely they are just different representation of the same thing, how we want these different parts of the organization to interact with each other. And we also can, I think that's sort of the principle of this picture of how we can combine these things into the same map. I think we can take the next one, because that's the one where we have added organization, isn't it? Exactly. So this is another way of adding yet another perspective, another of this overlays in the enterprise design picture that Milan started with. So the light blue shades, if you like, are a description of what part of the organization is responsible for these capabilities. So here we are adding organizational dimensions. So they can either be a group of people that work with these things, or you can even think of it as the responsible for this part of the organization is also responsible for making sure that these capabilities are behaving like they're supposed to, and also being developed to, over time, fit whatever purpose the organization have for them to fill. So this is, again, the same geography, a new question, really taking away a lot of this cognitive load when you're moving from different dimensions when we use the same map.
And you see, maybe if you look at the details, that customer relations appears twice on the map. That's not a mistake. They are actually responsible for customer support when buying tickets, but also customer relations later on. And this kind of complexity you can easily map, because it might be a feature, not a bug of that organization design.
Exactly. And here you can also play with, or play might be a wrong word, but you can try out different ways of scoping responsibility, and also see if we can use the same group of people in different parts of the value flow, just like you said with the customer relationship people. And here we have added even more on this one. Here we've added what we call a value stream. So this is how, in this example, something goes from an idea or a strategic decision that we want to develop a certain type of new ticket or something for, I don't know, like eco-friendly youth tickets or or something. And then how you would take that through the entire network of the capabilities within the enterprise to be able to, in the top section, be able to start offering this to our customers, and then being able to follow it up and see, did this work? Was it received well on the market? How can we make sure that we make this as good as possible for the next round, the next version of this product or service? So this is how we tie things together from a product or service dimension. And also, when you add the customer journey, or the flow of how a customer would move through this, through the relationship with this customer, with this company, we can also see how we can tie certain top tasks from the customers to the internal capability and what we are aiming for internally. So, for instance, you can see maybe in the let's see if we can have a good example here. When you're using your ticket, maybe you can use the cursor, Milan, to highlight the 1 o'clock or something. How we are internally working with certain steps to meet the different steps in the customer journey, or the top tasks. This is a way of making sure that we are understanding, when we work within our organization, what is the most important thing for the customers at this given state, or in their situation, so we are not spending time on the wrong things.
We actually have an example for that. Following now. So let's say we make the map even more complex, and we look at what the customer is doing and what they want, what we are doing internally in terms of capabilities and processes, but also, or value flow, but also who's doing what. So this is a picture that depicts very, very accurately the thing that we need to change when designing any ambitious new product and service, right? So we need to change our organization, our operations, in order to look to serve some kind of customer task across their journey. And so, but we can also, instead of zooming into the architecture, we can zoom into the customer world and take kind of the same visual language that that was in the adaptive path example, and look at, okay, what is the customer doing across this journey, and then how are those tasks served by our capabilities, like social media sharing might serve a customer task of talking with friends. Recommendation engine, their trip ideas, of course, processing orders serves the payment and the ticketing, and so on. What are the customer questions? What are the customer needs? Which channels are being used? And then our products and services will actually correspond to these kind of customer tasks, right? So we can say what we are offering is serving certain customer tasks, but it's also depending on certain capabilities. Now, if we want to introduce a new service here, so you see here that our travel app here is basically just serving the task when the customer is on a train. So what if we want to serve this question here, how to get to my train on time, getting to the station? So we might need to tap into another capability like station operations in order to introduce this kind of data, this kind of service into our travel app product. So this is the future state where the travel app actually taps also into that capability and serves this task of comfort and convenience while getting on the train, including also getting to the station. So this is where a pattern comes in that is also part of our pattern book, the Enterprise Design Patterns book that we both co-authored, which is called Moment in Time. So we basically look at a certain slice of the Milky Way. You could say a pie slice, or in France you would say a camembert slice. And you look at everything that is important if you want to make this kind of ambitious customer interaction happen at those touch points, serving that journey and those tasks. So what needs to happen internally to do so? And after a long meeting, maybe your Milky Way looks like this, right? So we actually have to take this travel app and connect it to the BMS the courses, and the live track in order to get this data into there to support that customer task to get into the station, because maybe in France, for example, you don't know until 20 minutes before where your train is leaving. So making these kind of things happen operationally and having this discussion with people that are responsible for the organization, for the product, for the customer experience, for the architecture, for the IT, for the operations, that's what this map is for.
And I'd like to say that this, by using it like this, we can, in a more conscious manner, choose what do we want to use from what we have in order to meet these new requirements, and even make the sort of the choice of saying that is an interesting requirement or need, but we're not able, given this time frame, to develop that. Let's see if we can find another version of it, or we can see that, okay, that is a small thing, let's add that because that would really create a lot of customer value. These type of discussions are really, really tough to have. Maybe not on one case, but if you have a number of cases, a product portfolio that is doing this balancing between the external needs and what we are capable of doing in a not too hard way, this is these are not easy discussions, and it's certainly not something that is trivial over in a conference room, referring back to the discussions we had in the beginning of the seminar. So supporting these type of things is really, really great value using maps like this. That is my experience, at least. So you can...
Yeah, and of course now some of you will be asking, well, is the green dimension completely trivial? And the answer is it's not. Of course, you can look into that one and can look into the different goals and see, like, okay, what kind of goals are around? What kind of, like, if we have a purpose like seamless mobility or ultimate safety levels, how do we make that happen? And in there you have many sub goals and many different things that you might want to pursue, that you might want to measure and track, and also dependencies between them. And so all three dimensions are complex. All facets are inherently hard to map and hard to relate to each other, and are hiding a lot of complexity behind. But the idea of the map is to give you room to explore them in context, in as much detail as you need, and also connect them to maybe some other models and maps that you make on the side that look into one specific question, like, for example, mapping processes to applications or mapping customer journeys to channels. Case.
A case, exactly. If some of you have been listening into the webinar from the spring, I shared these slides as well there. But we have been evolving because this is the overall starting, or we call it the aggregated view of the Milky Way from Scania. And this is a description of how do we create value and offer value and deliver value to the customers of Scania. And the change that we did from this spring is that we added this double or 8+1 or something, the feedback loop left, because we were realizing that the way that we draw this overall aggregated view of our Milky Way was too much into this steady flow of just taking another step. And we are really working hard to implement feedback loops and trying to work with faster iterations throughout our entire developing process that is on the left side here. So we have the areas of doing the right changes, doing the changes right, release the right changes, and then we jump over to the, I'd say, the external market where we offer tailor-made transportation solutions. We enable the value through our production and creation of the vehicles and the systems surrounding them. And then in the end, not in the end, but then the customers is getting value from using our products in the section down to the right. So this is the overview. And here I'm just going to let you do some sort of in-zoom into the map, there is a lot of things going on here, but behind every icon, there is all the different parts that we have been discussing before with systems, processes, people, competences, and all of these things. And we have been putting a lot of emphasis into making it more inviting and using icons so that we have people understanding what's going on faster. And another thing with this map is, compared to other capability maps, we have the arrows almost as large as the icons or as the capabilities. We are really seeing that part of what we want to convey and get people to understand is how is the dynamic between the different capabilities. What is the structure? What is it? What are the flows that we would like to emphasize and get going? I think we can take the next slide, and that is a short section of how we describe these things. So up to the left, you have the overall map. It's actually the old one, so you can, this is 2-3 versions old. So you can see how we have been evolving this. And I think this is live material. And then we zoom into the larger picture to the left to understand where in the more detailed Milky Way are we. And then to the right, we have I've zoomed in about the verification and production process of Scania. And you can see that in the box, there is emphasis on physical testing. And then there is a little icon up in the middle where we have actually emerged this into, we need to add the customer, because if we want to have faster feedback loops, we need to get things out to customers as fast as possible. So we are introducing a little customer icon already here in our internal development flow. And this I can say today in the map that we are having right now, there is even more customer and solution parts being displayed here, because we realize that the fast iterations and customer contact is key to what we're trying to achieve. So this is how we describe the map. I think you can take the next one with exactly. So if we look at talking about customers and users, where I am starting is within the team that is working with product development and PLM systems and supporting the design process of Scania's, all the engineers and all the design teams of how they design the vehicle and the software and the ecosystem services around it. Had a history of being fairly internally focused on our systems, and now we're exploring the Milky Way to get to more new stakeholders and new people being interested in what we're doing. And we're also adding this customer perspective, but our customers are at this given time, this was in the spring, internal users. So the design engineer or the production engineer would try to sense make their customer journeys and what they want from this system of capabilities in order for them to be able to do their job. So by just visualizing this and sort of getting everybody to think inside and outside and in the perspective was really valuable. So we make them visible, we try to sense make their perspective and experience, and of course we interact with them. And then we make sure that everybody is designing things are thinking of them when they're designing different types of support systems. So just pinpointing this was great value for us. And it was a really fast case. I think we're at the question side, right? Yeah. You're muted, Milan. I don't hear you.
I will just run through the last slides very quickly so that we have at least 5 minutes for questions. Yep. So all of this is part of the enterprise mapping and modeling discipline. And I really recommend this book by Steve Whitler and Jonathan Whelan on what kind of, how to use visualization for business transformation. And you have the spectrum, between how constrained is the language, how concrete is the representation, and who's using it? Are you using it to engage people and talk about change, or is it technical implementation diagrams? And what we try to do with the Milky Way is really position this map in the middle. So it's not as constrained as an Archimate or UML model. It's not as freeform as a visualization. And it mixes different schools, like mapping experiences by Jim Kalber, so experience mapping and jobs to be done, the intersection and enterprise design approach by looking at different facets, and the Milky Way map. And so, yeah, here's some literature that you might want to look at. Also, the Milky Way at the bottom is basically a way to connect various models and maps that you might want to make anyway, or that some other people are making. And yeah, tune in for the next webinar on Edgy, where we will talk about this, how to do that. There's also an implementation already in some tool vendor systems. This is a screenshot from Qualiware, but there's some others also working on this. We will look at your drawings immediately. Join us. We are not for profit. We are working on a toolkit. We have a Slack channel. It's free to join for everyone. And we are learning on these. We are learning and we are working on these products, and we need your help to do so. These are the next webinars. There's a training coming up in November in Enterprise Design, the Intersection Toolkit, also the Milky Way map. Join us for that. And let's look at your maps. Maybe Annika, do you want to already start looking at the questions?
Can do that, yeah.
While I'm
let's see here. There was one good question from Eurolf saying, if you're in a large organization, at what level would you position the Milky Way? Would there be a universe of galaxies, or would you have only one Milky Way? There's only one soul in the universe. No, there are a lot of suns. But I tend to say, to answer like this, one of the challenges that we have as architects is that we like to depict things and make smaller and smaller pieces of things. So my advice would be try to keep this as one map for as long as it's possible. And at a given time, it might break into more than one. I refer back to the operation model from MIT, Gene Ross, the enterprises strategy. And if you know that you have a number of different operating models, then most likely you will have maybe more than one Milky Way. But my strong advice is try to keep it as one for as long as possible, because the value that the Milky Way brings is this overall understanding of the entire enterprise, rather than depicking it. So that would be my advice. And let's see here, which stakeholders in organizations usually have knowledge regarding the yeah, Julia, that is kind of a tricky one, because I have moved, when I do these things, I've moved from this idea of collecting all these people in a group and trying to, from a consensus way of working with this, find this shared model. I'm going in, doing this with a fairly clear idea of what is the structure that I would like to find or use, and then we see how does what everybody on fit into this. And depending on where you are, you start with different questions. I don't think you can start with everything at the same time. I mean, my advice for you would be to go where you have a challenge, or where people need to find new ways, and then start with that section or that perspective of the map. And then as you go, you add things and really integrate it with ongoing work. So it's not something that is done on the side and then presented, but rather try to get close to whoever is interested in things like this as soon as possible. Since I come from traditional business architecture, enterprise architects, I tend to find people that want to scope projects or change initiatives in a good way. The PMO, maybe you're not calling that. Maybe there is a PI planning, there is a business context, architecture vision, the safe vocabulary. But those overview, whoever is interested in those overviews, and work together with them to get feedback also from them if the map makes sense to them.
And here's Julia's napkin.
Nice.
You have to tilt your head.
yeah, but that is on you. Supply chain enough. Exactly. Yeah. And depending on how much you expand the different sectors, you might shift the position of the different things a bit. But understanding the overall value flow gives you that geography, that starting point.
Yeah, and sometimes it's a bit difficult to be like, okay, is finance really before supply chain or not? In the end, often it's just important that you map it out, because sometimes making these maps is a bit like, should north be up or should it be down? But it doesn't really matter as long as everyone agrees where it is.
Yeah.
And so because this is a geography, which enables conversations, it's not aiming to be 100% evidence to accurate, but rather give us a shared frame of reference. And if you hear your product manager or your marketing person or your HR person say, oh, but that's more bottom left, then your map is working.
Exactly. Or you see people standing up, well, what do you say? We go more here, and then we go in that direction, then something has happened. And that is, this shared understanding, sort of create this collective intelligence in a larger group. Is kind of what we want to do. And also being able to have this common ground to experiment on. Any more questions? Thank you for the feedback. There were some questions about templates. I know if you go to Miro, there is a template called the Milky Way.
I think if you go here to the milkywayacademy.com, there should be a link.
Those are sites that are from my former employer, IRM Sweden, and they have also trainings that they're offering if you're interested. It's not quite what we described here with the connection to the enterprise design, but it's the basis of the Milky Way idea and geography and the connections to architecture things. And so that could be a starting point. But don't we have some kind of, oh, great, Rainer, that you found the template. Don't we have something in the toolkit coming as well for this? That's what I'm hoping.
Yes, definitely. So in the upcoming toolkit, so if you look at the starter kit that's mentioned here, so if you go to i-3.at/kit4, there you already have a template in Google Slides that you can also download and use in PowerPoint for making a kind of simple Milky Way using Edgy. And then, we hope that towards the end of the year, we have a first version, probably first released to our members. Of more of a library for different systems. And as I mentioned, there are also some tool vendors implementing this. So there are ways for mapping for your maps to come. Stay tuned.
Definitely. Like you said,
will be made available.
Yes. So I hope we have inspired you to do some sketching and finding new ways. And at least I am very curious about your experiences and if this works for you or if you run into problems. So reach out in either the Intersection Slack group or on LinkedIn or whatever channel.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining.
There was a question about the band again. You need to write it.
Oh, yeah, it's Asian Side Grind.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for helping out. Good. Well,
all right. Then
thank you so much for joining.
Of your week.
Yeah, really enjoyed the talk and your questions.
Me too. Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye. See you.